So today what I wanted to do is do some anti-social justice warrior advocates versus understanding. Maybe I shouldn't say logic, right? This video says logic. I think it's pretty absurd. Okay, anyway, let's go ahead and play this because I don't think people understand the movement of the pathos of time as I understand it. It justifies everything that did shore up, right? If people are unable to do it, the right likes to insist on some sort of like, oh, people are not capable of adjusting their thinking on things once new variables are given, right? So anyway, here we go.
What am I enabling? Because what I've talked about this evening isn't race or skin colour, I've talked about values. And when the BBC did what you're attempting to do now, as 1.3 million people have seen on my YouTube channel, what they did was try to conflate an admiration for American values, for the First and Second Amendment, for freedom, democracy, property rights, capitalism. They tried to conflate that with race. They tried to say, if you're proud of your country, or you admire the values of another country, that somehow makes you a racist. It doesn't. So I ask you one final time.
Well, okay, so right now, Milo, he separates what I believe is being separated out incorrectly here is that Milo, being from the UK, being British, he now is conflating the notion of British UK values with American values as an extent of the colonial population as opposed to a melting pot. The U.S. is known as a melting pot, right? So by melting pot, that already insists upon multiple races, multiple groups. I mean, we're the proud city on the hill nation that everybody supposedly is trying to get to, and for good reason. We control the financial system. I mean, generally, and we're a military hog. You know, we used to be a great economy. You know, now we're in competition with China. Anyway, so that's where he's made this error. Milo has, right? And granted, it's these things need to be dealt with.
Please justify your allegation that I'm a white supremacist. Hateful rhetoric, you're not answering the question. White supremacists hate me. The Daily Stormer is the epicenter of...
Okay, so what's wrong with Milo now is, okay, he's saying that it's white supremacy. And I think there's an understanding or a historic pathology of society that yields why that is the case also. But what Milo is doing incorrectly here is he's assuming that because this guy is saying that he's racist, that if Milo says that white supremacists dislike him, it's like he doesn't understand the name of the movie, The Devil's Rejects, right? Obviously, these guys aren't heaven-bound, and the devil doesn't even want them, right? So this guy's just finding out, like, he's just playing in, between this binary. So it's a false dichotomy that Milo is now presenting back to the student. And, of course, the student's on the fly, and Milo has some, he has some history with being able to speak on stage as taking the position.
On me. They said they would never read Breitbart again until Breitbart fired me. They said I was their number one enemy. White supremacists.
Plus, now he's making it about him, and this is a shift between speaking about one's experience, right? You want to grand over one's own experience relative to the world. And then you want to grand over what you believe are established ideas. Like if I use the idea of deontologic rule systems, right? Ontologic or ontology is that which is. So a deontologic rule system is basically saying something like you have to wear a collar in the business space as an employee, right? Or to do business, you're supposed to wear a collar, right? And so it's like an unspoken rule that is a given that is not, it's not written in the in the text necessarily. It may be written in the text, right? Even our legal structure, you could argue, the structure looks at the world, and we're behaving within the world, and then if there's violation and there's people to note the violation, then the police show up. The law is what is written, right? But the law, what is written, that's deontologic, meaning even if you understand its content, it's not. It's describing a rule system for a group and not actually the behaviors and the functions of the group. It's just noting a variation, a delimiting in the law and out of the law, and then the idea is whether or not you can migrate the laws and the categories and the rules. Anyway, so let's carry on here.
Anti-Semites hate me. I prefer the expression race mixing kike faggot, but whatever.
Okay, and so obviously this guy is upset. Now, my belief, right? Well, and I'll get to my belief on this, but consider this segment of Milo and this guy, and then when we get to this other thing, I watched you can see 29 minutes and 6 seconds of this, and then I was like, God, maybe I really need to start doing commentary videos on what I think other people could have said or should have said, or just my thoughts on the matter, right? Bringing myself into the conversation. Okay, let's continue.
Sir, racists hate me. They hate me. Of course they do. So, racists hate me, but I'm a white supremacist. You're just confusing me. You're confusing me. And I'm very easily confused because I'm a homosexual, but should we give him another chance? Give him one more chance. Okay. All right. Okay. One more try. I believe in you. I believe in you. I know you can do it.
Okay. Well, okay. So the reason I think Milo is white supremacist is, if you take the left's notion of privilege, right, and then if you don't even bring up intersectionality, just the idea of who's privileged by, right? You could compete with the idea of who is preferenced, right? Like, hey, this person's preferenced. Well, they're preferenced from other individuals, so they're not privileged. But if someone is often privileged or preferenced, then they might be privileged. Maybe not. But I think there's a distinction to be made between preference and privilege, meaning one could argue that. One can argue almost anything. So my argument is that he is white supremacist for the same reason that Ben Shapiro later on will bring up kind of these egalitarian strides against affirmative action, right? And so the idea of where the left is coming from is that they see that the right, at least these guys like the Ben Shapiro and the Milos and so forth, they're subtracting people's individual experience that they're noting on their side as being similar to one another. Like, yeah, we're noticing, this racial problem in this particular group, right? And then the groups got together in the states and they're like, hey, are you guys witnessing this? And then people were running stats on what they could. Oh, what are the incarceration rates? How many people are in there? And people start running the statistics based on, okay, in this nation, blah, 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 in this city, blah, 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 in this county, blah, 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 in this neighborhood, and then this person, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the point is that I think that the idea of supporting the notion that, like, for example, because of slavery and the Jim Crow laws and the civil rights movement and all of the everything that came about, affirmative action is a type form of reparation. It's where the government gets together and it says, look, we, the government, we're pushing affirmative action, or we're going to allow this as a governmental program, right? I mean, you want more Boy Scouts in your area, you want more Girl Scouts in your area, you want a government program helping a community. Okay, so you have basically affirmative action saying, look, even after all of these things, we have a whole population of people who are not performing to the level that we would want the excellence of America to show, right? So what do? Is they promote something like affirmative action, and that basically it's not. See that here's a clear distinction. The right is considering university attendance to be a finite slots to fill. Like, okay, this particular university will have 7,000 students on the dot, right? Well, what affirmative action did is it said it didn't. So that's the amount, right? 7,000. And then affirmative action comes in, and basically it's an allowance. It's to say, hey, look, we're not certain why this community is down. We're going to do something for outcome, meaning we want to improve the statistics of this particular community, right? Who we feel like through Jim Crow laws and other biases, historic biases, we have been keeping down. And I say that from as a white guy, right? Mostly white. Whatever. It's another story of what my genetics read. Anyway, point is that affirmative action is a way, like when someone's at heel, when someone's on they're kneeling, right? Like Colin Kaepernick. It's like saying, hey, look, at least in my mind, it's emblematic of a type of submission, a bow, or a showing one has faltered, or that one is purposely, for romantic reasons, submitting oneself to show the honor, to move the other person up, and to submit. Take a knee, right? To go to, in the Hillary Clinton phrase, go to heel, right? Or something like that. Nonetheless, you could look at any variance of people and say, if this group is outperforming this group and you want to help the underdog, right? Because we're American, we're also like underdogs for whatever mytho cartoon underdog reasons, or some pre-message about, hey, we always like an underdog, right? We like the little guy to win. We like the civilian to win over the Fed, right? That's why states' rights activists are much different than people that are all about getting into federal senate, right? The state wants to pull away from that. Anyway, so to get back to why Milo and Ben Shapiro and Jordan B. Peterson and Stefan Molyneux and Stephen, well, probably less Stephen Crowder, but still Stephen Crowder. It's this idea that the 7,000, right, is a top-notch, top number, right? But affirmative action is basically the universities and everybody looking at this and saying, okay, look, we are going to expand 20 more seats for Black Americans, right? Per university, per state university, let's say, right? We're just going to expand it. Now, from what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to find of that group what is high for that group. That's whom we want to take for those slots. So this is a type of allowance, right? This is what do you call it? Germans did for the Jews during World War II, or what other people do to help other people, is they hide them, right? They assist them. They do something. It's like handing out food to the poor or giving change to the guy on the side of the road, right? Obviously, his condition is not what I want it to be. And I'm not talking about the fake ones either, the fake homeless people or bums using it as a job. I'm talking about the authentic ones that are begging for the money. The difference between begging and fake begging, right? Anyway, and so the right insists that now there are 7,020 slots per university, and because my son is Jewish, white, or Chinese, or Hispanic, or whatever, they should have fair game at those extra 20 seats, that allowance, right? And so what's happening right now politically over, like, I guess the last probably 15, 20 years, there is more as more internet happens, there's more kind of how is the UK, or how is this part of the world, or connection, emotional connection with land and people that is unparalleled in terms of per capita amount of people being able to identify with their genetics, their homelands, their histories, to make parallels to things, to make arguments to things, to garner information, essentially, right, on this grand internet. Anyway, and so the argument, the long-winded argument against Milo and the right and this list is simply that they're criticizing a history of a government policy that actually recognized, maybe without naming it, like the right also wants to definitively name it, and assume maybe it's IQ, right, and then it's race, right, and then any black American, right, that is scoring higher, these gentlemen also like to assert their claims, and then one of them might be like, oh well, that black American, whether it's true or not, that black American um, uh, is the product, has white heritage also, and that's what's improving its IQ. Whether that's true or not, the right might assert that kind of idea, right? And that's what makes them mean white males, right? So they're asserting this level. They're criticizing historic behaviors of humans in institutions that note a problem and attempt to solve the problem. And the problem does require greater statistics on outcome per named population, right? That's what the program is about. That's why affirmative action is considered, it's a historic blight, but it does also function as a, hey, what can you do as a government? Right? We just came out of slavery. The war, slavery, post-slavery, industrial eras, migrations of people across the states, right? Uh, then biases and separated bathrooms and still segregated schools. And I mean, then it yields, right? And then so finally, kind of like Eddie Murphy says, nothing a white guy hates. Nothing a white guy with a nickel hates more than a black guy with a dollar, right? And so, but then you get differing populations of people, and some black people are doing well, and some white people are doing well. Anyway, I'm rambling. I wanted to continue this video, and then make criticism on the way. But that is the underscore of that. That's my commentary. You'll see how it might have been.
One more try. Justify your allegation. I didn't ask you if I was enabling white supremacists, which is just an equally idiotic allegation, but it's not.
Okay. Oh, okay. So, right. Okay. So, with him, if he said, "Am I enabling it?" and I would say, "Well, definitely, you're enabling it." Meaning, your blind spot, right? Your blind spot, Milo, is that you're enabling. You're enabling a white supremacist, a maintenance of noting a population down on an ontological, empirical, socioeconomic scale, or in other scales, and you're in a nation that's a boat, a maritime law boat, so to speak. You're trying to keep your boat afloat, and it's a mixed melting pot of people. So these things are issues, and maybe by doing one thing, it's caused another. But we didn't start the fire. The waves of war and the transgressions through time and the ability to voice individual, 300 million U.S. voices can get online if they have access and speak a voice. So it would seem. I'm even subscribed to a homeless guy, and what this homeless guy got with his change was a camera and a phone, and he posts to Facebook Live quite often from wherever he's sleeping on the road. He's in Colorado now, and he's a presidential candidate. Anyway, so yes, he is doing that. So is Milo a white supremacist? I will back down a little bit and say, well, he's enabling it because he doesn't understand what the fuck he's saying. And then this guy's like, hey, obviously you guys are running the show. Even my dialect, right, is different. And so you should know that I'm already at odds with the mother tongue, where Milo might take on the role of, hey, I'm the pre-mother tongue, so I'm really the mother tongue, right? Hence a predominance. Here we go.
The one you made. I'm asking you to justify your allegation that I'm a white supremacist. Please do so. enough. We've had enough fun.
And all I have to say about that in the eye roll is that it is extensive, right? What is this showing up? I have something showing up here on my camera. Anyway, all right, something about unemployment. Oh, okay. So, sorry, that kicked me out. Oh, because this guy says, look, you support Donald Trump. Donald Trump is echoing basically, like, Donald Trump is focusing on, like, external trade and immigration and certain exclusive categories, and the civil history of the U.S. is kind of not at all really being dealt with, right? And so because it's not really being dealt with, he doesn't have policies on population distinction and, you know, roles of how people function in terms of area, right? What does it mean to move to Nevada or Wyoming as a black man or as a black woman, right? What does it mean to move into any population where you're not, predominant? I mean, you need to travel more if it's an issue, I think, and maybe not. But right, some people want these areas. Anyway, the whole point though is that because Donald Trump doesn't address the civil history in terms of what he chooses of policy, once again, it's denoting a blind spot, right? So this guy's point, and I think the left's point, is look, we're pointing at what you're missing, and we're having a hard time articulating what it is that you're missing. But obviously, you're missing something, right? So that's my job, is to try to point out some things that I believe the right misses.
At the expense of the disabled. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you're so stupid. Thank you very much, everybody. It's been wonderful.
Okay, and I agree that Milo's pretty smart on all this, and he's only saying this guy's stupid, even though, like I said, the guy has I believe he had a dialectical distinction showing his non-native tongue, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is full-blooded American, and in that case, if he went to public school and had good teachers or fairly good teachers, he should be able to point to the negative space. But really, yeah. Okay.
But let's be honest. Let's not try and do this shell game here. You're talking namely about white police officers. You just said at least 4 or 5 times white kids are not as much in danger as black people. So don't bring up the race issue and then say that I'm obfuscating it. I'm not. It assumes hatred, and it doesn't look at statistical realities, and it is very dangerous to preach this and to get young black people to believe it because it's not true. It's less true than ever.
And hence you haven't lived the life of a black person, but yet you're saying that.
See what that is?
From experience.
That is an intellectual fallacy. That's not fair.
Stephen, and you don't want to hear that. We have experience with the stuff.
Larry Elder says the opposite.
We're not making it up, Stephen.
Larry Elder says the opposite.
That's condescending to try.
Okay, so right here, the guy on the right, black fella, he's saying, look, we have experience with this, and we want to speak on it. It informs our politics. Right, and then Crowder is saying Larry Elder, who I don't know, but I'm assuming he's also black, disagrees with this. So this is the other tactic of the right trying to truth quest, right? Instead of understand a history, they're trying to truth quest and find out what it is. And so now, okay, so if there's one black guy that says this and another black guy that says that, and a large majority of these ones grouped together, you could say that there's a neurosis that's occurring within that population. If they all just kind of get, hey, let's gang up, right? Which is different than just reading. It would be like conferring to grant over greater attributes to a thing, right? Different than still manning an argument, but you grant over greater attribute. Maybe it's not dissimilar to still manning, right? But it's more population oriented and culture oriented and value oriented. And so by value, I mean it's considered carefully, and it's cultivated well, like you're simmering soup, right? And so you're cooking something, right? Anyway, but then Crowder's just bowing back and forth here, right? So let's just note that here's because Milo did the same binary thing. Okay,
Try to say you guys just making this stuff up.
I didn't say you're making this stuff up. I said it's
What?
incorrect. I didn't say you're making this stuff up. I said
Okay,
it's
so
incorrect.
basically you saying it's incorrect means you're making it up. It's not true.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, I'm with Crowder on this, right? It doesn't mean it, and they're going to fetter this out. Here they go.
Do you know what a lie is?
I think we all know what a lie is.
Okay, but do you know the difference between a lie and something being incorrect?
Yes.
A lie would be, the difference would be intent. I've not applied intent here. The only person who's applied intent is you to all.
Okay, I'll give the lion's share of agreement that a lie is intending to assert something that one knows is not the case. But I believe there's also a margin, a domain there where one speaks not non-truthfully about an event, like, hey, it's night and there's no lights out and I see a car and it's a red car, right? But really it's not a red car, because at night with no lights, a red car is actually closer to black, right? It's not a red car, right? As a matter of fact, if you color splotch digitally a piece of it and compared it to red, like red on Steven's shirt, you wouldn't even argue that it was red. The contrast itself would delimit it away, right? So I don't always agree with these weird, like, traditional logical forms that some people have, but I don't mind them. So let's continue through this.
Officers, I have said you are incorrect or that information is untrue. I've not called you a liar. I'm not insinuating any manipulation.
I did not. This is what I'm
You said it's talking down to me to say I'm making this stuff up. I didn't say you're making stuff up. I said it's incorrect. Is that fair?
You said it's incorrect. Yes, you said it's correct, but what I'm telling you is that we live.
Okay, fully caveated. Boom. Right. Okay. So he's on board. He's on the same page. They're together. Here we go. So
Live in this stuff. We see this stuff. I grew up seeing this stuff. We're not making it up or it's not incorrect. This is the things that we've seen in our lives.
right, and I agree with this. Meaning now we're fettering out the distinction between what a deontologic assumption is, or rule system that Stephen assumes. Right. He just made the distinction between lies relative to intent and being incorrect. And he's saying now, whatever the topic is, he's saying this other person is incorrect. And this person is saying, look, I experienced this. We seemingly have an overlap, an intersection of common experience that we want to put voice to. Right. Now, none of us fully can speak for the gang, but we know that we're not alone, right? We know that we could speak of what this type of category of human is, right? Which I would think, subjectively, subjective, empirically brought in data that one learns is related to another person's subjectively claimed data. And if they're both sincere, then they have what you would call an intersubjective domain of claimed data, right? And meaning not just data, but agreement on what and how to approach that data. And granted, there can be reconsiderations of one's own data set, one's reflections on memory. Here we go back again.
And we're talking about it, and the problem is there are some people in this country don't want us to speak about a reality that's here for the black man and black woman in America. And I'm sorry if it doesn't make you feel comfortable. Well, you know what? If you don't like it, let's fix the issue.
You're making the issue worse. You're making the issue worse.
Okay, now Crowder is asserting that whatever this guy is doing is making it worse. And I think he's going to say, because you're not articulating it well, is really what it'll come down to, I believe. But
it's making it worse.
Your rhetoric saying that can I answer?
We're talking about cancer or AIDS or something like that constantly, and say, "Oh, you're making it worse because you keep talking about it." No, we want it fixed.
If we spoke about it in an incorrect way, for example, if we told people you can cure AIDS by eating sea algae, we'd be making it worse because that'd be incorrect information. You saying the problem is officers of any color or stripe are assaulting young black men because, and you don't provide numbers or statistical realities, you cover up information, you don't address information when it changes, it's not accurate, and you are actually telling people to address a problem, which isn't the right problem nor the right solution, and it makes it worse.
Okay, well, my thoughts on that, meaning my very criticism right now of what the mean white males are doing, right, is they're criticizing the blind spot of this group, right? They're not articulating this. This guy, I think, moved into the domain properly, right? I think he is expressing a general grievance, right? And now the idea of what is worse becomes, well, worse in terms of moving logical sound arguments into decoherence could be worse, right? In terms of policy, implemented law systems and structures, I don't know if this guy is doing anything worse, right? But he is basically conflating or including, according to Crowder, multitudes of different ages and races of police officers, and he's generalizing, and then he's focusing a generalization onto the death of black kids. I think that's what's going on, and so even the directionality of the spectrum is now under criticism by the right, and I agree with that. I believe people should be doing that. On the contra, once again, I'm trying to show that there's kind of an assumption about American legal history that the right has for the sake of a virtue that I think the virtue itself is fairly unsound. So here we go.
The thing about the Tracy Morgan thing, it's like
that whole thing I thought was bullshit.
It was. The Tracy Morgan
thing? Absolute ridiculous bullshit.
But Tracy Morgan is in some very hot water today for telling some very homophobic jokes at a show in Nashville last week.
First thing he says is, gays need to be tougher about insignificant things like bullying. And then he said, if my son talks to me in a gay voice, I'll pull out a knife and stab him.
I can't stand...
Okay, so just get a load of that, right? So if taken seriously, that would be fucking crazy. But Tracy Morgan's a comedian, right? So basically, he's down in Nashville, right? And he's trying to bond with the Nashville conservative culture, I think, right? In one respect, like he's aware of it. And if not, it's just a fucking funny joke, because in one way, it shows a deontologic, like, unspoken rule system. Hey, if you come from a strict conservative, like, straight edge mom and pop, so to speak, and I don't mean straight edge in the punkish faction. I mean like don't cross this line sort of household, and you already are imbued with the idea that young men that use a gay voice and say la 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 la, that if you saw that coming from your son is even an action, you know, at a very young age, they would probably like smack it out of them, spank it or something. I don't know. And in another case, Tracy Morgan saying, look, I'll just stab my own damn kid, right? Which, I mean, in the day of honor killings, I think it's kind of funny to say it. Like, I don't think it's a bad joke. Like, would he really stab his kid if he came out? No, but it plays into that deontologic rule, that overbearing conservativeness of you disown that kind of kid because it goes against the notion, the ethic of pride being a family extension, to have a pride, right? Like lions. You are encouraged to procreate, build a family. So any notion of homosexuality, you know, under a conservative line of thought, it's, you know, it's against it. Okay, so anyway, but that's Tracy Morgan's joke. And then, what is that, Bill Burr? He's freaking out because Bill Burr is, he's from Boston, and there's this huge cultural ethic of, hey, I don't give a fuck if you don't lay your jacket down over a pond for a fucking woman. But if you're going to slam a door in someone's face walking into a restaurant, you know, if you're going to push a door shut on somebody, it's entirely different, right? But it's not even that. It's a Boston ethic, and it's a take no shit ethic. So here we go.
Damn people who everything's funny, and then the shit comes around to them, and then all of a sudden they they stop saying it's jokes, they say it's statements. And I'm not saying because I wasn't there. And he got like tried. Look, you weren't there, I wasn't there, and I just felt like he didn't get a chance to say. He just immediately went into apology mode, and then all of a sudden they're parading around like this trophy.
And this is the only thing I'll say. You get to say whatever you want. We all get to, right?
Absolutely.
But the second it comes out of our mouths, it's no longer in our control about how it's supposed to be interpreted.
The person who said it knows what they meant by it. If you process it in a fucked up way, ask him how he meant it first.
But you don't get that luxury.
I love that, right? I love that option right there. Like, okay, so first of all, I totally agree with Bill Burr's sentiment, and even though I think he's straight edge about the distinctive line between comedy and sincere statements, right? Like the comedian on stage already gets a license to violate certain norms and exercise out the extension of free speech, which, different from the UK, you have a right to criticize the government to some extent. I think that might be the extension of their speech laws, but it doesn't mean you get to defame or incite or do all sorts of other things that in the States, we don't just have freedom of speech in terms of its sincerity and its inclusiveness towards a serious problem solving or description of reality. No, we also have this huge history of comedy and freedom to say the most outlandish things. That is an exuded or a stellated sense of freedom of speech. And I believe it's in its stellated form is what is actualized by free speech, meaning we want America is also about having a soul that is liberated or liberal, meaning it is the breath in which your lungs can express out your mouth. It's what linguistics is about, right? In the day where we can cut and paste, the difference between analogic history and tapes and one directionality as opposed to cutting and spacing and being able to search a PDF for a single word, right? Those days are upon us now, and so anything that was analogic is being dissected digitally, and then it's being generally, people argue for their own, what they believe their politics to. It's not uncommon to believe what you're conditioned to believe until you believe otherwise. Anyway, but I love this, right? You don't get the luxury of having a conversation with somebody if you disagree with what you think their intent is. I mean, if Tracy Morgan is seriously up there and he's trying to unnerve the audience, they can walk out, right? That's the most civil thing to do, and civility is also one thing of, I guess, the West. I mean, you'd say population norms around the world, but the idea of a civil law structure, that, I guess, is, if it's coded in the grapheme or in text, it's different than just a tribe that works with assumptions on how to behave, right, without having it encoded anyway. Okay, anyway, here we go.
You don't get the luxury to say, but I really meant to say it this way.
I realize that.
But here's what it really rests on is that the whole thing came off of one guy's blog. Every
One guy's
news
interpretation.
item about it.
Did Tracy deny saying it? No. Did the guy get it wrong? No. Those two things
How do you know that?
Because Tracy didn't say, wait, dude, that's not exactly what I said.
Whether he said something offensive or not, I just thought it was fucked up that one guy went home like with, I guess, the greatest memory ever, like a stenographer, and typed it out, and everybody's like, that's what he said, and that's what he meant, because guy in seat number 5F said it. And next thing you know, he's going around getting to apologize. That's kind of a scary thing as a comedian. I've seen Tracy's act, his show is crazy. His show is pretty over the top. I was trying to remember what he was heckling. I just remember cocksuckers, so I think we were talking about gay people.
There we go.
The fucking lesson here is the gay community has a very strong activist community who, when they hear shit against them, they take it to the mat, and guess what? Shit happens.
Yeah, but I don't agree with that. Guess what? Shit happens. That word, it can mean other things. It just can be ball breaking anytime you play sport. I was playing hockey the other day, okay? And this guy, he knocked me down. I felt stupid. I got up. He asked me, he goes, you all right? And I go, yeah, you faggot. Like, it was this oddly intimate moment. He was going, are you okay? And we were on the ice, and it made me uncomfortable. And I said, hey, you faggot, get away from me.
Like, why was it that faggot was the word that came to you when he was trying to help you?
These are the questions that they should ask. Rather than saying, you said it,
Well, okay, now, so, okay, so of a generation where, um, Bill Burr's a little bit older, and he's pre-internet also, but you're conditioned within what is like an allowable, like in certain puritanical groups, you're not allowed to curse, right? You're not supposed to curse in any way, and then you can retract that to, in polite society, you don't try to be offensive. The only time that one takes offense in the history of society is A, if there's disagreement, and B, if one is upset about the disagreement, right? Then at that point we employ derogatory terms or things that are naming a category, like fags, right, or homos, or lesbos, or trannies, if we want to start migrating it, right? And anyway, the whole point is that kids. I mean, now there's a whole option or a whole swath, right? But even if kids are upset, they want to hit the mark, but they want to hit the mark negatively, right? Um, and to me, it's the difference between the bear movement in the market, the idea of slashing down, as opposed to the bull movement of going up. It's a knife up movement. Like, look, we're still going to hit the target, but we're going to make them feel bad about this, and we're going to use a word that's derogatory, like fag, right? And the word is appropriate to make the distinction between what one believes the other one's preferences are, right? So historically, from my point of view, the neurosis of men that don't want to disclose their antimony against homosexuals often don't let their preferences be known at all, but their actions generally show their preferences, right? They raise sons. Those sons, kind of like the strict parents, right? The idea that the idea of two heterosexual boys saying goodbye to each other, right? Where the sense of intimacy is also absent in modern industrial capitalistic, I go over there to a shop and get my food and I come back, and I go to that shop and come back, right? This kind of beehive, outback, live in a box sort of universe that the world's, you know, the material world has become. Um, that particular that particular separation, where boys are also conditioned to not show so much expression or loving expression. Like in the Middle East, men will get together, they'll kiss on the cheeks, they might hug each other, they might even hold their hands, right? It's not a sign of faggotry. But in the West, if one has an intimate heterosexual friend and one is heterosexual, you can deflate and defer and say, "Hey, see you later, faggot. See you later, fuckhead." Right? You're inserting that, like, hey, we both know that we care about the other one, but we both know that there's this rule that says, hey, don't show, don't laugh like a fag, right? Don't talk like this, even in jest, right? Like, so the modern age gets rid of some historic practices or functions, and this might have occurred heterosexual populations to the history of homosexual populations is probably a very interesting phenomenon that we can never measure. We will never really know what this is. We're only working with what, the data sets that we have that we're able to record. Okay, anyway, let's do this. We'll go back here.
Said it, so it means this. Why did it come? Because of the way I grew up, because of the way guys are. You're not supposed to be, I fell down, are you okay?
I have a Liz Winstead story from when I was an open micer that I'd like to share with you. She's on stage. She had her friend Janine DeTullio, who was a very funny comic from Boston. They're all palling around backstage, this whole girls' club. She got on stage and she said, "I'm hosting open mic night, and when I'm here hosting open mic night, I've got rules." She has a list she's reading. She decides that she's going to interrupt the stand-up comedians while they're on stage and stop them from performing their jokes. This guy Brian, I forget his fucking name. He was a guy who would struggle to keep it together on stage every time. And he was a very gifted comic writer, but a very uncomfortable performer. So he goes on stage and he has this joke. Something about, I always make sure I open up the car door for my hooker. And Liz Winstead interrupts. Stop, stop, stop! Sexism! And he says, and don't think he doesn't appreciate it, which is his punchline. Okay, so she's standing on stage right after he says that, and she stopped him, and he's so awkward. He's got his eyes closed during his fucking thing.
Now, we
See, now that to me is fucking funny. A, it's funny to me because I made this Joe Rogan butt plug that's got a little fuzz on the top, so you can feel it when it goes in, right? And it's really comical. You're laughing while you're jamming the Joe Rogan butt plug in your butt, and it is the only butt plug that will wrestle you down. The only one that'll take you to the mat. That's not why I thought it was funny though. What I thought was interesting was the idea of what, like, she now is working on behalf of silencing a group of free speeching comedians. I don't know. I didn't see what was going on there. All I know is I thought, she's now questioning, hey, where Bill Burr did this idea of, like, where is the intent to be harmful and derogatory coming from, right? So that accusation is different than historic racial accusations. It's also different than speaking about, well, I'm already taking up too much airway. Let's move on to this. I wanted to get through this whole thing, but at least
have
where
this
I was.
idea that before feminism came along in the 60s and the 70s, that domestic violence against women was completely socially acceptable. Now, I don't understand how one can come to that conclusion when the President of the United States wanted to bring back corporal punishment, which had been banned, right, in most states at that time, exclusively to punish men who batter their wives. And especially since the treatment in communities for men who were battered by their wives, of which there were many, and you can see friezes and artwork from the 1600s and the 1700s that show women battering their husbands with their rolling pins and their skillets and all of that. Robbie Burns' Ode to a Henpecked Husband. All of those.
Okay, so one thing to note here, which I really like about Karen Strawson, like I like what she's done and what she really does, because if you take what she says seriously, that these historic cartoons are serious and that they're not sarcastic, right? Like the comic section or the opinion art, right? Which is attempting to be ironic in some way. Like, my notion is that, okay, supposing that whatever was written back then, before irony and so forth was allowed in the paper, I guess, then one could use this historic notion of illustrations of women with pins smacking men. Now, I'm not saying that this didn't happen, and she's saying it's very widespread, like this happened very greatly, and to believe her, seriously, kind of flips the coin on its head in terms of men, women, relative to social oppression based on rule systems, cultural rule systems. Gotta look at it.
Those things, there were women who were abusive to men at that time, and the treatment that the community gave those men was either the Skimmington Ride, which was the practice of the community coming around the house at night and beating pots and pans and screaming and throwing things at the house to shame him for allowing himself to be beaten by his wife, or they put him on a donkey backwards, holding its tail, and rode him around the town square and threw, or strapped him to a cart, and threw rotten fruit and vegetables at him to shame him for allowing his wife to beat him. Okay? And these things have been just quietly erased from modern scholarship and modern accounts of history. Right? Back when we thought it was okay to beat your wife, right? When we thought it was okay to beat your wife, at least when it was extremely egregious, particularly egregious, we'd strap the guy to a whipping post and give him 30 lashes.
when your wife was beating you, right? It was you that got punished by the community, right? So I don't know that feminism has a balanced perspective on any of these things. I really.
See, and I gotta love that. So if you assume that there was a significant population that was moving, and that this was a general culturally accepted thing during a time that is just unaccounted for, meaning there's an accounting, but there's not a prolification of this fact within the modern dialogosphere, right, or discourse, right, and that it's glossed over in academia, right, then you might argue, they might initially argue, well, it was a marginal issue then, right, almost to say that any musician that doesn't become part of on the radio, but becomes, fairly famous on YouTube or something, is marginalized, right, historically. And meaning they've been pushed out, meaning their music is less significant by virtue of not attaining a certain status, right? And so the feminists might argue, hey, right, they were marginal, meaning they were less significant than the majority of women's suppression that is promulgated, because they didn't get on the promulgation bandwagon, right? But in any case, if she is sincere, I think it's, meaning if the reports are sincere and the evidence is clear and you buy into that particular evidence and you just accept it, right, as the case, right? Try to empathize with that position. I think it's amazing, right? So that's where I do like this particular segment.
They don't.
Now is Hampshire College student Daniel Vogel, who is in favor of removing the flag, though didn't burn it. Daniel, thanks a lot for coming on tonight. So I want to read you a quote from you. This is to the Amherst Bulletin, and you said, think about the groups who use the flag, from police officers to the U.S. Army. These are the forces on the ground that make oppression happen. Now, the obvious point is, obviously, if the police and the Army were to go away, sensitive college students like you would be eaten alive. What's the median family income in this country? Do you know?
Median family income in this country.
What is the median family make? Yeah, it's much
median
less.
Family in this country.
Yeah, it's much less than 1 year of your
$60,000.
schooling. Yeah, $62,000, which is what you pay or your parents pay for you to go to Hampshire school and burn the American flag. It's much less than that. And so I just wonder if you understand the bounty that you have, the good deal that you have, the excess that you're benefiting from. Do you get that at all?
Oh, no, I am 100% privileged to be at this institution, and I think that I have to recognize the fact that the wealth of my parents that was able to pay for this institution was garnered off of slavery and was taken from exploitation. The land that I live on was taken from Native peoples, and the land that I live on back in Portland, back home.
Okay, yeah, and so okay, to echo these historic talking points of the history of colonialism and the white male European or the white families promulgating, right? Because to keep saying white male is absurd, meaning only for maybe legal history, but these are populations moving, right? That have different codes, different rule systems. So this guy is lamenting the history of America and saying, look, I'm obviously standing on the product of these particular points, right? Meaning black people that benefit now, Hispanic people that benefit now, any race that benefits now could be said to be doing so off of the back of black Americans, right? But meaning kind of like that, like apparently Ben Affleck has ancestors whom were slaveholders, right? Now, of all of the ancestors that Ben Affleck has, apparently he has one, maybe two, I don't know. I just heard this as an allegation, right? So as Ben Affleck lives now, somebody could say, hey, you directly, financially, through inheritance laws and money, obtained this particular status on the backs of slavery, where other people might not have, but they might have been in a community that had a bigger tax base, produced more product, sold more goods, allowed the parasitical symbiotic relationships of population to carry forward as they do, right? Anyway, so in other words, I agree, like I disagree with this guy's, like it's okay as a talking point. To me, It's an old argument. He's gonna make it, and then here goes Tucker back. So,
was taken from Native peoples. It's the wealth of the people who've been oppressed and who've had things stolen from them that allowed me to go to this institution.
But
And
then,
it's the
so why
flag
are you
behind
doing
it
it?
that
I
allowed
mean,
it to happen.
but honestly, why are you doing it? I mean, why not go pick apples in Washington State? Why are you consuming $62,000 a year of this blood money, as you describe it, to sit around campus and do pointless rhetorical and symbolic acts like burning flags? I mean, why not work with the people, the laborers?
I very much disagree that symbolic, removing the flag was a not useful thing. I mean, it got me on your show, correct?
Yeah.
It's a useful tactic in terms of getting voices out there. And I think that going to a school like Hampshire College, I'm not here to defend going to Hampshire College. What I'm here to do is I'm here to defend the removing of the flag from our campus, which was overall a democratic process.
So I can understand the context of this. Very quickly, you're for diversity, obviously, and yet I bet there's virtually nobody on your campus who's openly supporting Donald Trump. Do you yearn for more diversity on your campus, or are you happy in a world where everyone thinks like you?
I think diversity is a different word when you're applying it to political standpoints versus different aspects. Like, I can leave Hampshire College.
okay, so political flamboyance. This guy's basically just admitting, like, hey, I got here like Milo. I got on your show because of this. That's political flamboyance. It's not nothing, right? And he's basically saying, oh yeah, I'm paying $62,000 a year to go to this particular college, even though the mean wage of people is lesser than that. And so I'm very privileged, and I used it for political flamboyance. And sure, he did. So he's describing his reality. And I don't know. Not to throw this out, but notice he's white. Okay. Anyway, but I think Tucker's doing a good job too, kind of.
College and go to UMass or Amherst College right next door and expose myself to different viewpoints. The point of Hampshire College isn't to create a model of our country
I'll be right
and
back.
then simulate like political debate and whatnot. It's to figure out what is most liberally collect, what is the most social justice academia.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore. Well, I mean, when it comes to we've heard a lot about the imbalance of power between, for example, employers and employees, people who have better education versus people who have less education. I can say with a firm heart that the worst imbalance of power and the most violative principle when it comes to consent is the idea that you're losing, so you bring in the guys with the guns to enforce your point of view is to pay. That seems to me the least voluntary system, which is exactly what minimum wage is. As far as teenagers, the reason that teenagers are not constituting a huge percentage of the people working at minimum wage is because they're all unemployed. The fact is that Washington State has an incredibly high teenage unemployment rate, and when it comes to the minimum wage in the state of Washington, as we all know, the state of Washington has the highest minimum wage in the nation. So there is a relationship with regard to teenagers. Look, in an ideal world, and I'm sure we'll get to this, I'm wondering what exactly the minimum wage should be. Why $15? Why not $35? Why not $55? Why not $100? If we are going to be ideologically consistent about all of this,
Are you going to fight for a $50 minimum wage?
I will fight right alongside you for $1,000 minimum wage because I want to see leftist policies implemented in the city so that people actually recognize what impact they have.
Alright, I'm back. See what Ben's gonna say. Okay. See if I can get these both to record at the same time.
The fact of the matter is that the meme and the narratives are set around Black Lives Matter should be called Black Lies Matter. Because they don't want to talk about the real issues around why black lives haven't mattered. It isn't because of cops. It isn't because of America. It's because of the behavior of liberal blacks and the system that has made black people, unfortunately, put in situations where they are disproportionately criminals. And so this idea that you can't come over the top of that and say, don't all lives matter? What, 87% of this country's lives don't matter because black lives do?
And Mark, the thing is, way to get the other half to listen to you, right?
See, and that's okay. Once again, the idea of these binaries, they're very egalitarian actually on the right. Like, hey, look, the assertion that Black Lives Matter, it insists by its assertion right? If it's not well articulated, it insists by its insertion that the remainder don't. That's the problem. That itself is the false dichotomy of the right. Like, I don't mind you juxtaposing the two. I don't mind you asserting that. But the point about Black Lives Matter, right, is it's a reaffirming, right? It's a reaffirming that from their vantage point, for whatever reason, there still seems to be, I suppose, overarchingly, it is an enigma. Whether you can agree with that or not, I don't know, right? But what I'm saying is that if you don't agree that it's an enigma, then you believe you know why the world is in the state of its affairs now, right? Anyway, so the idea of Black Lives Matter is not a defamation on the others, right? The others that go around that, mentioning all lives matter, are missing, once again, the trajectoral point of pointing to why it is they're saying Black Lives Matter. They're saying that because they believe 13%, yes, 13% of the population is black, so they say, right? And there's there's a number, right, of more victimization against what we would call black people based on their culture, meaning their culture of how to wear, like the Trayvon Martin. Oh, I wore a hoodie on swim team since I've had a hoodie since I was 1978 probably, right? Whenever hoodies were invented, right? But hoodies and then baggy pants and wearing them at night and shuffling and being black or whatever, being suspicious, cause this, right? So they're saying, look, there's still, even if we're incarcerated more, and you can talk about stop and frisk laws, you can talk about whatever, they're still saying, look, something is still happening, right? And they're saying it's systemic, not because it's a law structure in a system, but because it's a statistical Gaussian fact, right? So maybe the word, meaning by Gaussian, I mean there's blurring statistical data sets that seem to coalesce in a particular, what do you call it? Like less sparse region, more dense parts of population stats, saying, look, even of black people that are not committing crimes, they're getting shot more, they're getting stopped more, they're getting abused more, and then the whole legal system is itself in crisis, right? Like judges don't want to see every case. They could not see every case before their peers. The system would fall apart, right? Plus, it would be paying out more to jurors than it's probably paying, receiving. But that's kind of the responsibility of government. But no, they do double charges, and then they plead one to one side. And it's generally the case that then prosecutors are given benefits for over prosecuting and even extracting exculpatory evidence that would be in favor of the defendant, right? And so there's the idea of the proffering of the prosecutor. The prosecutor takes lead over the judge now and over the system itself. Somewhere within this shakedown, from stop and frisk to shootings to the legal system, there must be data sets of okay, who's getting this bargain, how much is the bargain for, right? So certain guy got either, for some offense that he was exonerated from eventually, he was given the choice to plea deal to 2 years or to serve a life sentence. Well, he ended up serving 2 years, right? Because he didn't, like a life versus 2 years, and that's what he's faced with, and he's dealing with the reality of being charged. Anyway, here we go again. Let's continue.
Right? I mean, how are white people going to respond to the booing of the fact that their lives should matter?
Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees with the statement that all lives matter. I don't think
I think you're wrong about that.
Right, okay, so here we go. Nobody disagrees with the statement that all lives matter. And then she says, no, they do disagree with that. And so, yeah, the black community is trying to, like a cookie cutter, instead of saying, yeah, the whole pan of cookie dough isn't what we're focused on, it's this particular cookie that we're cutting out. making the distinction is fine. Like, what's her nuts there in the middle? She's making a distinction between what could be the case, but generally everybody's like, hey, I'm not here to murder, but I mean, obviously we're not talking about the industrial meat farms.
Protesters disagree with that. But let's listen to this in context. What was happening there was a protest that erupted about the Black Lives Matter. Obviously, there's been a lot of frustration in the black community over news of a new woman that was died in police custody again in Texas, and so
No proof that that was by an intentional action by a police officer whatsoever.
Okay, now I really like Megyn Kelly here in that she is retorting it. And so even what he is doing, right, is he's, like, in the day of modern prolification, like before the internet, news and upset would arise around the country. There's local crimes and local stats and local facts that are going on all over. In the day of the internet, any one location, anywhere in the world, but even domestically, like if everyone's walled off to speak domestically, meaning within the nation, the U.S. nation, anywhere within the U.S. nation that there's a violation, it becomes accentuated, right? It becomes platformed, right, as huge, right? And this gives an opportunity, once again, to focus in on the cookie cutter or to focus in on the greater picture. So Megyn Kelly being on the right, once again, using an egalitarian approach. She's got a black guy on my left, her right, and a white guy on this side. And the white guy is basically white knighting for, like, hey, look, black people are not stupid. They don't necessarily think, like, hey, all white people need to die and all everybody else needs to die or whatever. They just don't like the idea of being reduced to a statistical... Sorry, interruption. Here we go.
we should reserve judgment and wait to see how this
like we should have in the Michael Brown case in Ferguson, which helped give birth to the Black Lives Matter movement, and it was based on a lie.
The fact of the matter is more than 400, about 400 people have died at the hands, unarmed people at the hands of police, and most a disproportionate number, and I'm sure Kevin is outraged by this, a disproportionate number of those is black. Now,
Okay, but
listen to why this is insensitive.
But way more white people have been killed at the hands of police officers over the past 2 years than blacks have. Go ahead, Kevin.
If you look at proportions, that's
Go ahead, Kevin.
Exactly right.
There's a proportion more black members of the community
Okay,
have, but
go ahead. It's Kevin's turn. Go ahead,
That's
Kevin.
absolutely that's absolute fallacy, and it's what these guys do. They come on all the time. They spew out this nonsense data because they know that the least common denominator is not going to check it. It's nonsense. White people are killed in disproportionately more high numbers in percentage to crime than blacks, and you don't see white people running around talking about white lives.
Okay, well, now, if he's saying white people per capita are being killed at greater disproportionate numbers, then that's a contrary narrative, right? It's fighting over a statistical fact based on the averaging of a population of people and saying how many people died of X, right? And then grouping it by race, which by itself, like I kind of agree that under voting polls or other polls, you should not have to mark your race, right? That there should always be other or non-commenting to show one's disagreement with the notion of the frequency of one's history of alleles over time does not have a necessary individual variation, right? It might have a common phenotypical theme, a thema of phenotype, but it doesn't investigate the history, and yet we're still like, hey, what are you? Are you black or African American? Are you Caucasian? As far as I know, the Caucasus Mountains being between Ukraine and Turkey, right? Like, there is a grand shift there between the Arab group on the bottom, the Turkish group, and the top population. But the yield of that allele system up above, the Caucasian, whatever they're saying that distinctive line was that occurred there that grants over the Caucasian status, that varies all the way to India, all the way up to the north, all like around the planet, just meaning there's huge variations in even what it means to claim one as Caucasian, right? Other than mere phenotypic argument. I don't want to get into that, but I do like that Meg has brought on these two guys. The white guy is supporting the black initiative generally, to speak of it that way, and the right, the black guy is supporting like, hey, these stats are just wrong, right? And they're both dressed conservatively. They're both dressed in business suits. I'm a slob. These guys are well done, and I believe there's a preference, not a privilege, a preference to not like me because I look disheveled, right? And my camera angle shows my chin. Okay, here we go. How did I even get to 29 minutes? I don't know.
Call the cops on this campus if someone hurts your feelings? If someone hurts your feelings, and that woman at Yale yelling at the professor for saying, I think Halloween costumes should be allowed and we shouldn't be censoring them. How do you sleep at night? I'm going to leave. Good, go. I mean, I look at that, you tell me, Nomiki, because you're going to defend these people. I look at that and say, I can't wait for my kids to get out there in the world against these people.
Well, so, okay, now, my particular opinion about costuming is the same thing as being, you might want to be couth to the environment that you believe you're going into. Meaning, you might want to try to fit in and not ruffle too many feathers, generally, right? That's my personal thing. So, but if other people's reaction is a political reaction to what they believe is culturally misappropriation and that they believe in that politic, you can't control for other people's political thoughts on it. And my belief still, as American believing in still-aided expression or extrapolation of expression that is not just about freedom of criticism, but freedom of dress, wear, that type of thing. I think costumes should be allowed. I mean, I had attached a dildo on the front of my scooter on a non-Halloween day. And I had painted my scooter, and I wore weird shit, right? I think between that which is vulgar, which protects the civility between parent and children, and other parent and children civility, relative to non-parent, non-children, adult swimming civility, that argument should be made. Meaning, I would have hoped that I was stopped by a police officer when I was doing that and given a citation for indecency or vulgarity. Okay, I'm gonna let this play. Here we go.
I can't wait. They're gonna kick some. That's my reaction. Am I wrong?
Well, okay. To be fair, these are not administration. These are students. These are 20-year-olds who are reacting, and it's a very racially charged environment. Words matter, and so when that letter was sent on behalf of an administration official, somebody who's supposed to represent the students, to create, you look at the documents that Yale sends out, the application documents, and it's all about having an inclusive community.
This guy was defending Halloween!
Well, he wasn't.
Right, okay, so Halloween itself might be considered uncouth in the modern day, just like the maintenance of the Confederate flag. Like, hey, look, it's a symbol, we don't like what it represents, we don't want these states to support it, so at least get it off the states. Halloween, hey, look, we don't really appreciate you dressing up in a papoose if you're not Indian. But the thing is, or the idea of making it scary, and so Meg comes from this conservative notion of Halloween, a day set aside for costuming, and whether or not one should be. Anyway, I don't even know why am I. Oh, because she said words matter, right? So the idea that words matter, right? Like bullshit carries weight. Meaning, if you speak bullshit like Trump or somebody else, it carries some weight, and it carries some entanglement, and it carries some context, and it even carries some collateral damage to it, right? Only the very most quiet and soft-spoken, uncouth, unoffensive people that maintain this kind of self-restraint in the States, those people get along generally. They're able to move through situations, but not entirely without conflict in their life. But yes, words have weight to them, and in some respects, I'm against hate speech laws or hate crimes. I don't mind denoting something that's hate speech or considered it, even as long as it's up for infinite debate, right, relative to intent and relative to reconsideration. But I don't believe in hate crimes. But words, yeah, words do carry weight, but whether or not one should be able to not express oneself in fear that somebody else is going to be upset, and by being upset, that expression is necessarily going to negate not, something legal as opposed to something social. Like in England, the guy that taught his dog to do the Hail Hitler, even as a joke, and that he's not of that political persuasion, he was convicted legally. And that to me would be a huge problem, right, if that starts happening in the States. Because here we go.
Defending Halloween, he was defending being offensive to a community of people that are being marginalized. I mean, 7% of the
He was saying if you want to go as Tatiana, the frog princess, you should be allowed to.
No. He was acknowledging that someone who shows up in blackface, it's okay, it's a joke.
And you think that should be banned? Halloween, that should be banned. And what if you want a guy who wants to dress like a girl? Should he be banned?
Listen, there are the stereotypes. There's plenty of stereotypes that we have changed over time. Things that would now be totally unacceptable. We had this debate about things.
Gender expression would be offensive if you want. So a guy dressed up as a female nurse. That's offensive.
That's not. These things are not for the people who are doing it to determine. It is for those who feel hurt. If you feel hurt,
that's fantastic. I hope you have young kids like just exactly my kid's age. Ben, you take it. I understand the offense. I understand you go to the race place and that all that what happened with the swastika, but you can't wear the Halloween costume you want unless no one finds it offensive.
Well, now the selectively offended get to run the rest of the country. I mean, this is what we are creating. We are creating a society of panty-waist fascists. What we are creating is a group of people who are oversensitive to everything and that are willing to call the cops as soon as they are offended. It's actually incredible, and it's a violation of the First Amendment, which you saw with the professor from the Mass Communications Department in Missouri telling reporters that they have no right to be there, and at Yale you have students shouting people down. If this is the climate that we're supposed to create, if this is supposed to create openness and tolerance on the campus, I'm missing the openness and tolerance in let's call the police if I'm mildly offended because my feelings have been hurt. I mean, this
See, I totally, in this case, I agree. Like, I agree with Ben, and I understand her, right? I agree with Ben, yet I understand her. As if somebody else is able to be arrested for flipping me off, like driving by and flipping me off, right? I didn't road rage them, but I called the cops and say, hey, how dare you? Or for that notion of harassment, this vague notion that my words necessarily are getting into your head such that, not my behavior, not my movement, but my words are getting into your head such that you find them offensive. I totally agree. I mean, I agree with Ben in this particular case. The way I understand her is that I don't like to assume where one balances their soul relative to their civilization, and whether or not you devalue a different individual as opposed to a familial individual, right, or somebody that you're familiar with or that you've spent some time with. The distinction of devaluing that person initially, like if someone has a necessary bias where they think they're better, their clan, their pride, their group, their politics are better, then they can weigh it and devalue it. Now, the left as a movement is trying to, once again, take an obvious stat on outcome, bring us back into solutions, and think about the overall population of what it means to have a placid pond in which we have the boat of America. Not an ocean, not waves, not monsoon season. This just happens to be monsoon season, right? And so, I mean, I guess every generation kind of has had its monsoon season. Well, maybe not all. But, America as a warlike people seem to be the case. And so, don't get me wrong, I like that these are being fettered out. I generally tend with Ben on this in terms of policy, in terms of rhetoric. But it doesn't mean that the idea of saying the selectively offended, right? Like the selectively offended and the evidentially offended should be two different categories, right? So if I have historic evidence that and I share that evidence with other people that I'm familiar with, and that I'm extended to that are different that believe in that offense, right? Then that shows a pathos, and it shows a chronos of the pathos, which is required. Chronos is required for pathos, right? You need some time extent. If it's a static state, I call it a neurosis of a population. Anyway, so that just for your clarity. Anyway, so the idea of the selectively offended as opposed to the evidentially offended would be two different people, right? Like if I just go out and I see something and I can just point out and make up how I'm offended, right? Then I'm just selectively doing it, right? The left is trying to maintain a notion of intersubjective consensus and in terms of the idea of common sense and the idea of general egalitarianism that comes with a melting pot understanding of what we believe is the shining city on the hill. Not that any of these anecdotes aren't also historic epitaphs of what America is, right? But these do seem to be reiterated, the idea of the melting pot, the idea of diversity. In diversity we find strength, right? Not entirely, I don't like that idea. In diversity we find strength. But the huddled masses and the poor and the weak, we bring them in because we are considered a system that if aligned with has some benefit. So anyway, the right, I guess how the topics are being framed and what exactly is being posited as argumentative points is starting to also yield a Gaussian thema, right? Like Trump, for example, like I said, he didn't bring up racial issues so much as he was defending not doing it. He just wasn't addressing any of those. He's addressing external international trade, business, immigration, things that are the outside of the stamp, the cookie cutter stamp that is America. And anything that's within that, he thinks that's all just noise, right? And that's my assessment of where Trump's political value ethic is. It's in deontologic business rule practices and allowances and loopholes and getting away with business and then utilizing a sphere of businessmen. But anyway, it's not about me.
It's creating a country of crazy people. How can you watch this and not go crazy and think that everyone who's involved in it is crazy in the first place?
How about that woman from the communications department, Namiki? Listen.
Shutting down the student reporters from filming the protests she was promoting. Guess how you promote them? Put them on
Exactly.
TV.
I do agree with that, and I think that Josh Earnest has said the same thing. There's a very thick line between
She's apologized,
being
Evan.
politically incorrect and being racist. And words matter. So when a community of people that has been perpetually marginalized at institutions across America over history feels offended, we should acknowledge that. And I think that these protests are a reflection of a community of minorities that feel unacknowledged and not respected. And so
Okay, now I'm just going to say right here, now this is not, that it might be framed as a narrative. I don't believe we can sum this up as a narrative. This is an evidential group, right? We can refer to them empirically, we can denote them phonologically, we can grand over attributes. Ben is busy shaking his head, so let's hear what his retort is to this. But I agree, and I think I reiterated her position. This is why I'm into contradiction. So both of these people need to take stock of what's being said, and where this happens, where the contradiction, the domain of the contradiction would be like where my second knuckle is, right? The intersection of the contradiction. And take stock of that, and then try to, in my opinion, the hand with the ring, should attempt to identify, empathize with the part that is missing from their vantage point. That's what I hope to do or bring to this, is an idea of stellating or folding or reintegrating something that is not necessarily a logical, egalitarian, binary logic process, but finding binaries and intersections where A and not A are actually, they're occurring. In this case, they're occurring right here as these two speak. Okay, so here's where Ben will retort.
Ben, I read your article today, and I was shocked by the language you used. You were saying that it's time for the right
call the police
to
right now.
fight. Yeah. No, but you read his column.
Evidence. All this
Missouri that drove this. Really? Where was the police report exactly when it came to, for example, the first N-word incident that led all of this? There was no police report on any of that. In the second incident with the N-word at the University of Missouri, the administration investigated, and the kid's under investigation. And the third incident with the cop cars,
let me just ask you this, because we're short on time. You tell me, Namiki, whether we are training these kids to be little cupcakes who never have to encounter anything offensive.
Okay, now look. When I was growing up, there were two Hispanic families down the road, and there was a black family around the corner, right? And they had just moved in maybe a year prior, the black family, but they were already ostracized. It was a Mormon community. It was generally homogenous white. My next door neighbor, one of my buddies showed up, and as a joke, he says, "Hey, Mike, you want to go call the niggers niggers?" And I was raised with an egalitarian, you deal with people one-on-one with their character. He was raised in a they are lesser than, and we don't give a shit, say whatever you want attitude. And when he said that to me, under the context that it was, I laughed. I thought it was so funny because it internally went against the ethic that I was supporting, meaning it was denoting, okay, do not use those terms in this way, right? So that's one, the class, the N-word class, as a, like, internally, it's see, like, I like the class of cases of the N-word in the U.S. in terms of what it means, right? Because inclusively, if you say that to a black person and you're not of that community, and you're white, and there's a history, an x-axis of that deployment, that could be taken as, historically, it can be taken as I view you as lesser, I'm going to treat you as lesser, and if I had the chance to put you back in that position, I would do it, right? So it's this weird identification of what one's people suffered through inclusively, and yet on the right side, it's merely a word. Right? Hey, it's part of the lexicon. I'm free to speak it. It's uncouth if I do, but when you saw Bill Maher do it, and then Ice-T came on saying, "Hey, man, that's still our word," right? And Bill Maher, even though he used it, he went on. He got shamed through it, and I think he did it fine because he, like me, was using an objective story, right? And as much ridicule as I might take for stating this way, I'm reporting back on something that happened, right, to me. Anyway, so I'm not certain how this meandering, or I like how he said pussyfooting or something like panty waist or whatever, right? But there is this notion of what one's decorum of speech is like that they would wish ideally would occur around the planet. And then there's the variance, right, that occurs amongst anybody babbling anywhere in the world that one comes across that speech. Back to the conversation with Bill Burr, right? Like if I'm in direct dialogue with somebody, we can check each other right on the spot, right? You're going at each other. I think the arsenals on both sides are, like, I think the right is saying, hey, these guys are cringe, look where we're getting them on these talking points. But it's only because they're posing a lot of binaries that are true and then some false dichotomies and then false dichotomies, or dichotomies and the other person doesn't know, like, oh, well, I'm not certain what to say on that. Meaning it's more of I haven't encountered thinking about it that way, not that I'm agreeing that your way of thinking about it is correct. Obviously. I don't know who changes their positions.
Assuming everything you said is offensive, they never have to encounter it because they can call the cops or they can get their administrators fired, or whether it's better to educate them that there are offensive things in life, there are insulting things in life, there are people who will say very incorrect or impolite things about you, politically incorrect things about you, very publicly, and in a way that you might feel very offended by. And you have to deal with that in life.
See, now, the thing about Megyn Kelly is that she takes on a legal status of being a public figure, where people that are on YouTube, to some extent, once you've exposed yourself, you're considered a public figure, but legally speaking, you can still express and record yourself publicly without being considered a public figure. Public figures are definitely open for all criticism, where private figures are people that are trying to retain a sense of anonymity those individuals they can pull out more because they can't be referred to as promoting something that a figure promotes. They retain an individual position, right, in their civil lives, and they enjoy the freedoms of that position without being criticized, right? And so that's one thing, is that certain people, like political figures, are always open for criticism. Other individuals are not always open for criticism. A public company like TripMate that I just did a video on, that I'm like, hey, these guys are assholes. They're a public company. I'm going to criticize them, right? I even criticize a few individuals that are not on the airwaves in some of my videos that are private, and meaning that kind of like recording people without their knowing is not too dissimilar in my mind. What was I going to say? To, well, I'm not going to make the comparison now. Okay, anyway, back to this. We got to get through this. It's killing us all. Yeah, get educated.
In moments of hysteria, fear, conflict, there have been exceptions. Internment was an exception.
Well, who's hysterical right now?
And we can have that debate later.
No, who's hysterical right now?
What I'm saying to you is, you may be right that in the absence of any kind of national hysteria, fear, terrorist attack, war, whatever, in the absence of all that, bluster may remain bluster, a guy tweeting may remain a guy tweeting, and all may be well. That's one scenario. I just think we need to be alive to a second scenario that our country also gives us the basis to think about, and which I think is underrepresented in some of these conversations, which is that at certain moments, a terrorist attack of a particular kind that fills people with fear gives the president a license to do things that he could not do 2 days before. We know that with mass surveillance. We know it with torture.
I don't think it's underrepresented. I think the problem is that fear has been overrepresented in these papers. And you have a situation where it's the boy who cried wolf, and everybody keeps talking about him being a neo-Nazi. And then what happens is, what do you call him next after of a neo-Nazi, when perhaps somebody in the administration does suggest something that
Joe, do you think
the Constitution?
You read history and you know very well there have been moments like this where there have been disagreements about the appropriate level of alarming.
FDR,
correct?
no,
I'm talking about other countries that went in worse directions.
I'm talking about our country.
Right. Okay. Now, I agree once again with both these people. On the one hand, that the guy is saying, look, these are, there's this margin, it's occurring, there's this blustering, there's this happening, these things are moving around politically. And then on his side, he's like, well, look, let's not make the same the idea that the blustering is not over-exaggerate to the point where it's the boy who cried wolf, and then if somebody up top that's actually moving policy does something that is that way, their alignment isn't functioning as a buttress to support them, right? Meaning this guy here, he's suggesting, I think, that look, we don't want to stand for somebody, right? And then the guy that's running the show, he says, the white guy on the right, he's saying, look, you don't want to cry wolf either, because then if somebody does make this policy, you're going to be embellishing them, bolstering them, and allowing them to push through something that actually might be of I guess, government-run capitalism or fascism is a definition. Anyway, let's see what these guys are saying. Gal, we're close to being done. Thanks for holding in there.
Part of the problem is if we only talk about our country, we're not actually being fully vigilant.
Actually, we are being fully vigilant, because as the editor of The Economist said, our country actually is different. And by the way, there's a reason why dictators have not been able to do in our country over the past 240 years what they've been able to do in other countries. That's because James Madison put together a constitution along with Alexander Hamilton that created a system of checks and balances.
They were able, okay.
And by the way, and I've said this to Donald Trump before, when he was attacking Paul Ryan, they said, look here, Paul Ryan, he can shut you down and stop you from passing.
Under that system of checks and balances, we were able to do torture, we were able to do mass surveillance, we were able to do internment, we were able to do segregation, we were able to do slavery. So,
Boom. Oh, I love that he just said all that. I love that he said all that, because we are. Plus, we had habeas corpus, what I talked about with the judicial system and prosecutors. You can always get the shit end of the stick. Things almost seem more dictatorial through police action, and the fact that policemen are rarely incarcerated, prosecutors are rarely incarcerated. Like there's a certain class that is dividing up based on their behavior, these things, and then in policy, historically, he's mentioning it, he's going through it. And those things need to be held in weight. Now, as you guys notice, in case you didn't notice, this is a 2016 video, but I've been listening to some of these and wanted to do some commentary, so that's what I'm doing this video.
all I'm suggesting to you is that within our tradition of things that have been judged legal, I'm not saying, let's just say I'm ruling out things more worrisome than those things, but we can agree those things at different points in our history have been considered legal and constitutional.
Internment, et cetera, yes.
And the internment case, Korematsu, has never actually been overturned.
All right. So,
I understand the case for being calm, but
I'm not saying being calm.
If you are wrong, what we get is something very much more dangerous than if I'm wrong. That's all I'm arguing.
That's why I said we stay vigilant. I just personally have.
Okay, I agree with that. Like, if he is wrong, right, then all we have is the notion of the Constitution and some proud, virtuous legal system, right? That's what we have left over. If the other guy is wrong, then, you know, and once again, here's a dichotomy, and he's trying to fold it. He's suggesting that people are not allowed to express their individual grievances about what they see happening periodically, chronologically, over time. The idea, see, that when somebody uses the word system, and they're using the word systemic, immediately the right made systemic that which was codified in deontologic legal systems and in like business systems, right? The way to keep the business going, the machine running, right? You don't want to throw a cog in the gears, right? But so to me, the idea of system overlooks the idea of overarching pattern, right? If you have what's called an overarching pattern, right, through time, or you're noticing these things that do come on the radar, then they should be taken seriously. Like, people want certain subject matters to be taken seriously and dealt with seriously. They want them to be well considered and well thought out before they make judgments on things, before they make a course of action, or before they implement policy. And so I think that's what he's expressing. Perhaps if the other guy is wrong, it doesn't make this guy's position more right, but it might force people to become more serious and conscientious about what does happen. And then as far as what the facts are, I think, like, to say, okay, there's more white people that die of crime, and maybe even white-on-white crime, than black people per capita. Maybe that is true, right? It opens avenues of new consideration. Now, if that's the case, that grants over, oh, well, you got the facts wrong, right? And so then there's this insisting upon what the facts are. When you're talking about history, then all you're left with is artifacts of history, right? You're not contemporaneous with the people that have already died and their situations and their cultures. And even if you are contemporaneous with people that occurred before you, you don't know what happens down to the individual level, individual family group, community, tribe, state, region, province, blah 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 outward, right? Like everything is in this mush. There's things that are moving around. This is just kind of how we're boxing these, or this is how it was boxed back there in 2016.
Confidence in the Supreme Court of the United States and Congress and the system of checks and balances in our Constitution, that I do think that we don't need to jump out of there. They keep yelling at us, so we don't need to jump out of windows with our hair on fire.
Although, how Anand may feel is that's easy for us to say. I mean, your family, Thanksgiving, talking
Fear is
about,
not evenly distributed
so
right now.
That's fair.
Fear is also contagious. Yeah, fear is contagious. And we have nothing to fear but fear itself.
Also, I think
Well, okay, now the only reason I like the "there's nothing to fear but fear itself" is when you believe in these politics and you adhere to them, and then you hear an argument that is contrary to your own, and you are being considerate, oftentimes one can focus on what their signifieds are as a thought and believe that that actually is representative, referential, to a coherent universe, but minus seeing violence. Like when I walk outside, I don't see violence. It's not that I don't see violence. Apparently, rarely, periodically, it's going to show up, right? But right now, I don't see it in my real world. But if I believe that it's happening, then I'm just fearing something that's merely the fear itself. The idea of staying vigilant. Like, look, we need to stay vigilant, meaning we need to light a candle, meaning we need to focus upon the idea of, hey, I'm not having to jump out of a window with my hair on fire, right? Because I don't see it. This is just a discussion. It's merely rhetoric. It's merely tossing around words, trying to do summations, summaries on people, classify people in different ways, new ways, hopefully fun ways, and then everybody can have their own gender classification. So I disagree with the idea that gender classification is part and parcel the same thing as avatar classification, right? Avatar classification is freewheeling, it's open-ended, it's transitory. The idea of saying one identifies, if one is going to conflate gender with avatar, right, at a certain intersection, I'm saying, well, feel free to do it, but yeah, legally, I think it's an overcomplication, because a legal system draws lines and draws boundaries and tries to deal with particulars, right? So in one case, it's not an Occam's razor. We're not simplifying things, we're complexifying it. And to some extent, I think, okay, expand it a little bit. But if you have open range, and then there's some legal precedent, like the Jordan B. Peterson case, where he could be sued by not using someone's preference, then that falls into like a hate speech squared issue, where then anyone could randomly also claim offense, and that we then the difference between speculative and evidential cases for one's position can bump into the gender free range argument, such as to convince the college student or the quote unquote leftist that their biological gender should legally be mandated and recognized by law. Almost like, hey, the number of nut sack hairs I have that are under an inch should be codified in law, right? What is that?
it's a little scary that a month before he even takes over the presidency, we're already talking about the need for the Supreme Court.
Well, that's scary you. That's called the First Amendment. You want the First Amendment to suit you the way you want to suit it. I guarantee you on it, there are 50% of Americans at least who believe that somebody that burns the American flag should be.
And the whole point of the First Amendment
Hold on a second.
is to restrain what a majority can do.
Okay, but the First Amendment also has its limits. I support the ability of people to be able to burn the American flag if they want to. But people have the right in this country to debate it. And it does not mean that the Third Reich is going to march down our street.
I didn't say Third Reich.
Somebody tweeted it. We don't, okay.
I don't worry about flag burning. I worry
You
about
have the final say, and we've got to go because they're screaming in my ear. Go.
I don't worry about the desire to criminalize flag burning. I desire about the punishment included in that tweet, which was the stripping of citizenship, which is outside
That's
the
not gonna happen.
I'm not giving up. He's the president-elect of the United States.
The Supreme
The
Court
fact that he
will not
proposes it.
You're not being rational now. I got to just say this before we go.
Okay. Now, I agree with the guy. Like, look, if a president, a public figure in a high office, makes a general sentiment that is entangled in a comment suggesting that somebody's behavior or their expression is reason to be, I don't know, jailed or decriminalized or whatever he said, at that point, that would be a problem. But you don't want to infringe on the president's right to free speech. But this, like Alex Jones, or anything that has a collateral effect, not necessarily effect, but effect, because it's a consciousness-oriented thing, like it's just a pity that we brought in the most uncouth of presidents that could say certain things to, like, fuck up Rosie O'Donnell, right? Like, if he called for the death or harassment, anyone that's got any clout, if they call for death or harassment of somebody that has lesser clout, there might be conflict that comes along with that. So, well, legally, it's allowable, right? It's allowable to be said, but in terms of people's, as soon as words function and affect other people into behavioral actions, that's when the crimes begin to become tantamount and reversed. So even this is a contrary idea. Should the president be allowed to say certain things knowingly that a certain segment following them, right, whatever their opinion is that's derogatory against another person personally, can defame that person or their property or their pride or whatever? Should that be off limits, right? So this is kind of a couth or a cultural, once again, non-spoken, but their sort of policy. And here we're in contra. Should the president lose his free speech? Or should the effect of speech, as it is weighted in conscious effects and is mobilized within other people's behavior, should that be, what should be done? The is and the ought gap is amplified here. We're so close to being done. Thank you. Anyway.
You're not being rational. If you believe the Supreme Court is
I'm not being rational for taking the president-elect of the United States at his word.
Let me finish, because you know what I'm going to say, and you don't want me to say it because you know I'm right. The Supreme Court of the United States of America will never, under any circumstances, allow anyone to be stripped of their citizenship because they burned the American flag. And if you don't believe that, then you haven't been reading constitutional law for the past 70 years.
All right, right. So he believes, like some people say, hey, Trump will never become president. It's just not going to happen. It can't happen. It happened. And then this guy's saying, look, you'll never get a Supreme Court saying someone's going to lose their citizenship for burning a flag. You'll never do that. But you might, as soon as moving a symbolic object is revered by a nation that one should not or be allowed to defame it, that one might lose citizenship or something like that. Like, it seems, meaning it would be the elimination of the irony that comes along with it, which I believe in the support of the irony that comes along with flag burning. And so a president that is stating his ethic and it's not being registered as such doesn't mean that other people don't behave that way. So what are the restrictions of speech and political angle? It's a complex and I don't know, should I say it's a hyperbolic domain, and so here I believe there functions as contra-narratives or contradictions, that are running contra to one another, and so you want to justify that they're both foundational, but the ones that you trust, what it is they're speaking on, like for Morning Joe to say, you don't want me to say it because you know I'm right, that kind of shit. needs to be contested. But beyond that, I don't know. It's interesting to support contrary ideas at the same time, because it often, it causes a type of mental and psychological dissonance in people. So it's good to try to formulate a dialogue of diplomacy. That's what I hope today. Anyway, thank y'all for watching. I'm going to shut this down, hopefully. We'll call it SJW right vid or something.